Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the SBK Betting Podcast with Tom Collins, Ross Miller, and I am back. It feels like it's been a little bit of a while before Royal Ascot. I was last with you and had a little break last week. And to be honest, feels like I should be taking little breaks, or at least I should go to Glastonbury every year, because this podcast had an absolute belter of a weekend last weekend while I was away. Delighted to have been following it from afar to see 5 winners, including the winner of the Irish Derby in Los Angeles and Ross's second at Sunway, each way at 16-1, making up the placings. But the winners came thick and fast. Ross, I was delighted, as you would have been, to see Blue Stocking. Even though it was a short price win at 11-10, she's got some guts. She's a mare that's going to take a lot more beating throughout the course of the season. You also had Tales of the Heart, second at 9-2, and then TC. Alphonse Legrand 3-1. Onesmoothoperator though 12-1. A quick word on that, because Ryan Ellison is having a season for the ages, and it's lovely to see, and a decent price for what is an extremely tough race, the Northumberland Plate, to crack.
Yeah, it was a really good Saturday. One of those rare Saturdays where everything just seemed to click into place. Alphonse Legrand was easy, and I kind of anticipated it would be, as many did, with the market suggesting he was a good thing. Onesmoothoperator, obviously all the money came for Trooper Bisdee. Once he missed the kick and then was super keen going wide around the first turn, I thought, well, we're on here. Onesmoothoperator travelled really well throughout the back of the pack, as anticipated, moved into the straight, and he virtually hit the front on the bridle. It was a remarkable performance. You know what, though, Jess? I'm just fuming because in my SBK column, I wrote that Evaluation, and one other, I can't even remember the name, Duke of Oxford, were the 3 to focus on. They finished first, second, and third. 9,911 to 1 TriCast. Didn't even have a penny on.
Well, I think if you had done, we wouldn't have been seeing you for a long time. And this podcast needs you, TC. We don't need you sunning yourself in a Caribbean island somewhere. We need you back. So for the commitment to the cause, but well done. As you say, a really solid weekend. I think we've got into such a good place in the flat season. There might be drama and politics going on as there always is, but I think the racing just is really good this weekend. Obviously, the focus is on the Eclipse, the 3:35 at Sandown, and it's about it returns the Derby winner, City of Troy, the horse that proved myself wrong, proved TC right, and showed what we were hoping to have seen in the Guineas. But what we have seen since then, we've seen his form has been franked with the Irish Derby, and now he takes on his elders for the first time. But really, it's just a group of the strongest horses, at least in the race, being the 3-year-olds. And I think that's what it makes this race quite interesting, as we were wondering who was going to turn up and take him on. Currently, we've got prices up for City of Troy at 7-2 on. Dancing Gemini, who was behind him in the Derby, is 11-2. Ghostwriter, who we haven't seen for some time, he was in the Guineas, he's 7-1. Arifid's an older horse, 25-1. I suppose the interesting one of all is the 3-year-old JRB, who comes off the back of the Royal Ascot success, but a bit of a surprise to see him coming back so soon. So I suppose, Ross, we start with it. It's not really him taking on his elders, and that should be the concern. It's just, let's see how he gets on coming back in trip after extending out so well and showing how much stamina he had in the Irish Derby, in the Derby.
Yeah, I mean, White Birch is a big miss, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting. TC voiced at Ascot that he didn't think ground would be such an issue for White Birch, and it turns out it wasn't the ground after all. It was blood. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. This is a penalty kick for City of Troy, isn't it? I mean, I think we'll see a bigger performance back over 10 furlongs. I think he definitely stays, but I think they'll probably be able to make more use of him here. I'm expecting a performance akin to his display in the Superlative at Newmarket last year. I think he'll absolutely smash them, but 2-7, just not a price. I think that anybody can get involved with, unless you're the sort of Michael Tabors of the world, and you can have 6 figures on to win a pot. I'm not in that league at all. Dancing Gemini, I suppose, is the obvious one to follow him home. But then you look at it, he's won a maiden, he's won a listed race. I mean, he's been beaten every time since. There's a question mark over whether he's going to want the ground on the quicker side. His best form has definitely come on slower ground. And he did make a very big move in the mid part of the Derby, having missed the kick at, when the gates open, was shuffled a little bit far back, got involved in that scrimmaging, made a very big move for a couple of furlongs, but he wasn't able to sustain it at all. And given that he would have been very conservative with his energy through the early stages because he was ridden patiently. I just am not certain that it was quite as impressive as it looked. Al Riffa is a horse I've had plenty of time for, but I think he's going to want a little bit slower ground. I'm not sure he's quite the horse I hoped he'd be. So in a race where I probably won't have a bet, but 25-1 JRB, I do think that's not a bad price because I think he was value for more than a winning margin in the Hampton Court. Much of the focus was on the unlucky run of King's Gambit, and I completely see that. But JRB was very keen through the early stages, had the race won comfortably inside the final furlong, and if you watch it back, he's pricking his ears until King's Gambit comes to him, and he does then go again. I think he had a bit more left in the locker. He's at rate 111, Dancing Gemini's 113, so he's got £2 to find with him. I'm confident he'll like the ground. I'm confident that his form is solid. I think that Hampton Court race is going to be a very solid piece of form going forward. I'm not so sure about Dancing Gemini, as I said. So at 25-1 to run into a place, provided 8 go to post, I didn't think was the worst price. And you've got Sean Levy keeping the ride. The other thing I'd just point out about Dancing Gemini, Roger Teal didn't want Kieran Schumacher, did he? They were hoping Oisin Murphy would ride it. I don't know if you saw the quote written down here. They're taking a chance on Kieran Schumacher. Well, given that Kieran Schumacher is probably feeling the pressure a bit and probably not at his most comfortable in his own skin, his own abilities, for all that I don't think he's done an awful lot wrong since getting the Gosden job, the last thing I think you'd want to be hearing is a trainer saying, they're taking a chance on you. I thought it was a really poor choice of words by Roger Teal, and given the pressure Kieran Schumacher's under, it's only going to make his job just that little bit harder on a horse he's not ridden before on a racetrack.
Yeah, of course, Dylan Brown McMonagle was on him in the Derby. He had ridden him in the French Guineas as well. But obviously, they're trying to look for maybe jockeys with more experience when it comes to Group 1 level. And we know there's been so much discussion around Kieran and having that and being able to fulfil that role for the Gosdens. Okay, right. So JRB, I think is that kind of, he's the mystery one, but he's a big price. The market isn't saying that they've got confidence that he's going to get, that close to City of Troy. And he does have to race his game big time. He will like the ground. I'm slightly concerned that it might come too quick for him. But TC, I suppose, look, it's probably not a betting race, is it? But it's an interesting stepping stone. We should see it as for what's going to happen next. And I suppose that's what you're going to be really looking forward to seeing. Will he go off to the Travers? Hopefully it's going to be the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Aidan O'Brien has done this with his type of horses that will end up in the Classic, likes of Giant's Causeway, Hawkwing, all those types, might have been at different stages of their career, but he likes to use this as a well-trodden path. So what are you expecting to see from City of Troy on Saturday?
Yeah, basically everything you just said there is kind of how I would round up this race, preview this race. I expect him to win. He's not a bet because risk massively outweighs reward at 2-7 in a race like this. I think City of Troy, as I've said numerous times on this podcast, is up there with the most talented flat horses we've seen in the last decade. Yeah, the Guineas run aside, that wasn't a very good performance, but the rest have been, as Ross said, the superlative stakes last year. Effort is kind of what I'm anticipating here as well, travelling smoothly into the race and kicking clear. But as you say, Jess, there's 2 things I'm most looking forward to. One, watching him race, because he's a joy to watch, especially in the Derby. How scintillating was that turn of foot coming down the hill? And 2, finding out where he's going to go next. I think that's the main talking point. Whether he does go to the Travers, I'm not too sure. Sierra Leone looks like he's going to be their option, the team's option there. Breeders' Cup Classic's definitely in play. Currently 6-1 favourite. I had a look on Oddschecker, 6-1 favourite for the Breeders' Cup Classic, 12-1 bar. You'd want to see him running the Travers if you're going to bet him for the Classic. So I want to see what Aidan and the team at Ballydoyle want to do with him. But I anticipate him to win the Eclipse. It's a pretty poor race. And as Ross said, with White Birch defecting and not able to run here, City of Troy against nothing really.
And what about if it wasn't the Travers, but it had to be something before you, or there could be another option in between? Is there anything that you could work out in your mind that would make sense?
It would be odd for them to ship over to the US not for the Travers as a Classic build-up prep. They could go for something like the Haskell, but again, I've never seen Aidan ship a horse to Monmouth for a start. So there are lots of different options they could go down, but none of them are well-trodden paths apart from the Travers. I don't think they're going to go to the Travers, but I would love them to actually use that as a prep, because otherwise, if he goes to the Classic, I'm going to have huge doubts about him. And this is a horse that I've got loyalty and love towards as a punter. So I would like to see him go to Saratoga, but we'll see after Saturday. Hopefully he wins head in chest and they think, yep, let's send him across because the Classic is the target. We need to give him a good prep.
Just
Okay, well,
think of the outrage now when TC deserts City of Troy for the Classic. Oh, the outrage in the comment section.
that will be a good punching match for when it gets to it. But I'll do my best. I'm there on Saturday, so I'll do my very best. Should he win, to try and eke it out of Aidan O'Brien. If he's going to tell anyone his racing plans, may as well tell the American viewers. So I'll do my very, very best. But yeah, look, this is a race where you've got to sit and kind of sit back and watch it. We want to see good horses. I suppose I think I was guilty of being desperate for perfection, and perfection was Frankel. Perfection is unbeaten horses. But I think nowadays you've got to accept that a horse can have its off day, and then really rediscover what we know of it to be. So look, let's hope that it continues. I would have more confidence in Dancing Gemini than you, Ross. I think he was given a lot to do in the Derby, and I don't think he's an overcomplicated ride. I do think those were funny quotes from Roger Teal, but I think he's probably feeling the pressure, if anything, as well. And, you can get things, a little bit wrong in terms of your wording when you've got so much hype in your mind about how a horse can do, and especially when essentially it gets on the track and you lose all control over it. So we'll see. I think Kieran's got a great head on his shoulders for the position that he's in at this stage. So I would be in the side of City of Troy with Dancing Gemini behind him. So I think he would have got a little bit closer as he hadn't had to go so wide. And as we know, the Irish Derby is frank with form of the Derby. Okay, not really a betting race. So let's focus on the Old Newton Cup at 3:15 at Haydock on Saturday. Great racing there over the next few days. And this is a race which always attracts a solid field. We've got 19 runners that have been declared this morning. And we'll give you the prices as it stands. So Relentless Voyager for Andrew Balding and Oisin Murphy. This is where he is. He's up at Haydock. He's got a pretty big ride in the Lancashire Oaks as well. La Yakel is 5-1. Chillingham 6-1. Epic Poet 8-1. Iron Lion 9-1. Maglac 9-1. Sheer Rocks 12s, as is Tamusis Fox. And if not now, 16s, and bigger prices, sort of similar. It's a very open betting market. It's a good sort of race, this, and interested to know how the mindset has worked for it. I suppose, Ross, we know where a lot of these horses are at now, a lot of the big improvers. I thought Relentless Voyager was pretty steep in the handicap, despite running a good race at York last time, up to a point, to sort of give a lot of weight away to some of his big rivals.
Yeah, absolutely. A race of this nature, I'm much more comfortable finding something an each way price that I think's got a good chance of hitting the frame, and but has the ability to win a race of this nature. And the one I came down on is Sheer Rocks for Eve Johnson Howden. I think if you watched his win at Epsom June last year, won off a mark of 89, absolutely sluiced up. I think you'd be hard pushed to argue that you didn't think he'd be able to follow up off a £5 higher mark of 94. Came to this race, was very keen for the early stages, which is not really him. Didn't see his race out. Was beaten into fifth. Wasn't a terrible run, but wasn't perhaps what they'd have expected. But interestingly, he wasn't seen after that. I wonder if a little issue came to light. Returned then at Royal Ascot last month in the Duke of Edinburgh Stakes, off a mark in 93. I thought he ran a really big race. Lacked racing room at the right time, having missed the start. He actually reared in the stalls, missed the start. I thought he finished off pretty well from a long way back, and very little came from off the pace at Royal Ascot, as you'd all be aware. He's down now to 92, so just £3 above that run at Epsom. I think he's got track conditions to suit, big field will suit, providing he's not too keen in the early stages this time. I think off a mark of 92, he's got a big run in him with that return after 350 days. Should have brought him forward from Royal Ascot.
Callum Shepherd as well, but to ride, a jockey riding with full of confidence. We kind of I think a lot of purists, a lot of people who love the sport, you kind of really want to see that, don't you?
Yeah, he conducted himself really well, didn't he, losing the ride ambient friendly. I like the fact that he didn't say, oh, it's racing, I'll get over it. He said, it's racing, it hurts, I'll get over it, and I'll let my riding do the talking. And he has. I think flat racing more than jumps. Just don't think people understand the split seconds decisions people make, and there are such fine margins between brilliant rides and poor rides. I mean, I think Emily Upjohn and Kieran Schumacher last week was a prime example of that. If he'd have held on, it's a brilliant ride. But then, of course, because he doesn't, it gives a chance for people to say he went too early. And it's the ifs and buts and maybes. I don't think Callum Shepherd gets an awful lot wrong a lot of the time. Unfortunately, I think people are looking for it when he does. But as you say, he's conducted himself brilliantly. He's riding really well. I've got no issue at all in sort of backing a horse with Callum Shepherd on it. And I think at 12-1, Shearox has got a decent chance.
Yeah, I love what he said after the jock off of Ambiente Friendly. He said, "Don't worry, I'll be okay." And he was. And he had that kind of glint in his eye that he would be. I thought it was just a really cool way of delivering it. Okay, Old Newton Cup, maybe a bit more fun in the spotlight for Callum Shepherd for Ross. Tom, good, cracking handicap this. A lot of horses in very good form. And I feel like trainers lay their horses out for this. So I could have picked a couple. What have you found?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this race. Relentless Voyager deserves to be favourite. He brings the best form to the table. That Epsom success 2 starts back was really nice. And last time at York, I just don't think he was suited by the way the race panned out. Small field, Ryan Moore dictated things up front on a Willie Haggis trained runner. Meanwhile, Relentless Voyager was out the back of the pack, asked for effort, but tried to quicken into a quickening pace, and that always is difficult to do. So the fact he finished third, I think, was solid. He's the horse to beat. Laia Kell represents William Haggis and Tom Marquand, leading connections right now, bang in form after a fantastic week, 25% strike rate. This horse is always shaped like he's capable of winning a group race or even a listed race, but there has been an occasion where he just flatters to deceive in the final furlong. And if you add that to the fact that he's coming back off a long layoff, I'm a little bit worried that he's going to be vulnerable late. And at 5-1, I don't want to take that kind of risk. So I'm also going to go for a horse at a slightly bigger price. I think 9-1 you just said there with SBK. And there's a horse called Iron Lion for David O'Mara. Now, this is just in the hope that the forecast rain on Saturday morning lands at Haydock. If it doesn't, I don't like the horse and I won't be betting the horse. But if the rain does come, then I will be. There's 8mm scheduled at the moment between 7 a.m. and the start of racing on Saturday. And providing the ground stays good, as it is right now, I think it'll be good to soft by the time racing begins. And that would really suit a horse like Iron Lion, who loves to get his toe into the ground. He's got a big, loping, soft ground stride. He's had his last 4 starts this year. He ran a Newmarket, didn't handle the Rolling Mile. He ran on good to firm ground last time and didn't handle it. The other 2 were very impressive successes. One at Doncaster against a group of inferior rivals. And then he won at Haydock really nicely, travelled through the race well. And that kind of performance, I think, stands him in good stead for an event like this. He's a hold-up horse and there's a big field with lots of early speed. So again, he should get a nice toe into the race. And at 9-1, considering he's well handicapped and hopefully, fingers crossed, gets his conditions, I think there's far worse each way plays in the race.
Yeah, and this horse is a really good story actually out of Stream song. So this horse is a half brother to Lava Stream, who ran an absolute blinder at Royal Ascot for Elwick Stud, but behind the Great Roaring Lion, he's just got that kind of attitude that the late sire, sort of delivered to his progeny. And as you say, was a winner over course and distance at Haydock. Couple of starts back. So yeah, quite a nice price. We say 9-1. And got to remind you all that SBK will be running a 25% winnings boost from this race. Terms and conditions apply, max stakes apply, but a 25% winnings boost. So if you're going to go for Iron Lion, the likes of 9-1, that's not too bad at all. And for what it's worth, I'm going to shut Chillingham in there. He's 6-1, so the shortest price of our selections. But this is a horse that he's a little bit frustrating because he's a horse that we know, I think you sort of know he's got the ability. He hasn't won since last April, where he altered up on soft ground at Thirst. So I think, again, a bit like that for TC, he wants the rain to come. So do I for this horse. But he ran a really good race at York last time, where he stayed on strongly to take third behind Crystal Delight. He was always sort of gaining. I think he probably actually would do better over a little bit further. He's got some really good form, back form for over the last year or so. He's still sitting at a rating of 96. I think that he's got it in him. The cheap pieces clearly helped him that little bit. Kevin Stott comes in for the ride. I imagine Callum Rodriguez is over at Sandown, as Ed Bethel's got some nice runners on Saturday. So we'll see how he gets on. But Chillingham around 6-1 for me. Again, needs a bit of rain. So that's the Old Newton Cup on Saturday to complement the Eclipse, and it actually comes about 5 minutes afterwards. So keep an eye on the racing and where it's coming from, because here, there and everywhere. We had, as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, a brilliant weekend last weekend. Naps, next bests, each way selections. It was close to I was going to go to first, but I think I'm going to have to give it to TC, especially as he's probably still feeling the ache of not having the TriCast up. But we'll go to you first and see what you're gonna give to us this weekend.
Yeah, my nap is probably going to be a relatively short price compared to the last week's winners, but hopefully we get another victory on the board. And that horse is El Burhan in the 140 at Beverley, the first race on the card at Beverley, actually. This 210,000 guineas purchase, a son of New Bay, made a really promising debut at Newmarket earlier in the season. It was tender handling. He was wide away from the near side rail that day, the furthest horse actually away from the rail, which was a clear bias on that afternoon. Yet he stayed on taking me for fourth behind a very nice horse of Godolphins. A couple of runners have come out of that race, including Richard Hannon's Principality, who finished second and have won since, boosting the form. George Bowie then sent him up to Yarmouth. Horse was under pressure early on in the race. It looked like he was going to disappoint. Then he found a fifth gear and really powered through the latter stages and won decisively at the line. I like the fact they're going up half a furlong. I like the fact they're going to Beverley. It looks like a very winnable race. And the fact that Paps Turf, who won last time up, and Footwork, who performed nicely on debut, are in the field, suggests the price may be kept down a little bit. I anticipate maybe 11 to 10 even money. It's relatively short, but El Burhan should win the 140 at Beverley. Jim Crowley's gone up to Beverley, by the way, just for that ride. So definitely look out for El Burhan. The next best is going to be at Haydock in the 350, and it's going to be a horse called Hofberg for Richard Hannon. I'm targeting 2-year-old races this week, seemingly. This event is a nursery, so lots of unknowns going in here, whether horses are well handicapped or not. But I was in the Sky Sports studio when Hofberg ran last time at Chepstow. He got into an early duel with a horse trained by Archie Watson called Fieras, and they were going ridiculously fast down the hill. Obviously, it's a sprint race. Obviously, it's at Chepstow, so they're going to go quickly due to the topography of the track. But they just went too hard, and they set it up for the closer, who was Ranamok, trained by Hugo Palmer, who just pounced late. But I love the fact that Hofberg put away Fieras and then fought again when Ranamok came alongside. It was a clear step forward on his previous two efforts, despite the fact that his previous two efforts were actually pretty strong and encouraging. Now going into nursery company, he gets to run off a handicap mark of 75, which to me looks pretty lenient. Alec Wojkanski takes over and takes £3 off. Again, that massively helps. And he's definitely riding better this year. Last year, he was not aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion, but this year he seems to be getting much more professional in the saddle. So I think there's a lot going for Hofberg. I don't know what price he'll be, maybe 5-1, maybe a lot bigger than that. But I think he's got a good chance in the 350 at Haydock.
Okay, thank you, Tom. El Burhan and Hofberg. El Burhan, I was keeping an eye on that declarations for that race because Jamie's got a newcomer in that and was wondering if he was going to try and scare everyone away. And he did declare that horse at 6 a.m. this morning, but a few horses are going to try and take him on. So El Burhan in the first race at Beverley, as I said, George Bowie flying. There was a graphic he put up on how many winners he had for June, and I think it was 26, was it? The strike rate, it was record breaking. So it was no surprise when I saw Ross Miller's nap and next best selection. You can take it away, Ross, but I think you probably saw that as well.
Well, I've been following it this month, well, last month as it was actually, just a lot of horses taking big step forwards. I think a lot of it's because he was quite poor through the early part of the season, so probably had some quite well handicapped horses. The nap comes in the 3 o'clock at Sandown in the listed contest, and it's Soprano, who, as you'd have known if you watched the daily podcast at Ascot, has been a clip horse of mine. She finally got it right in the Sandringham Palace and was very impressive, I thought, under a really good ride from Billy Loughnane. Comes now to listed company, stays over this mile trip, racing around the bend. She's got some really good form at Sandown as well. She was third in the listed contest last year behind Shuari, who is a really good filly who's off the track at the moment, but she's one to watch out for at the back end when she comes back. And Fallen Angel, of course, went on to win the Irish Guineas. Mile triple suit. She's £5 clear on ratings, provided she's got over those exertions of Royal Ascot. And she is quite a tough filly. She ran plenty last year. Don't see that'll be an issue. I think she takes all the beating in the 3 o'clock at Sandown. And then, yeah, you're right. The next best is another George Bowie horse. Who I didn't actually sort of put two and two together. I'd put two together. But 501 Fever, I just thought ran a huge race in the King George at Royal Ascot. was rushed forwards to get a place, and as a result, just ran very keen through the early stages. Looked to get swallowed up, was under pressure turning in, and came with a huge late run, particularly inside the last half furlong, which, when you consider how inefficient he was for the early part of the race, I thought was quite noticeable. He's up £2 for that, but he goes up 2 furlongs here. His last half furlong at Royal Ascot was really impressive. I think he's got a great chance of defying this inflated mark, going up these 2 furlongs in the 205 at Haydock.
Yeah, he was fourth behind Going the Distance, so I think is a pretty useful animal. But he was a classic George Bowie horse because he's ran his all right races and his novice races, and then he just went on a winning sequence in handicaps, and he's now gone from a mark of 75 to 92. So it's just he's got sort of something in every category, doesn't he? And he's got your man Callum Shepherd on board again on Saturday, so it could be a good day for you and Callum, Ross. So good luck with that. I'll give you my Napa next best for Saturday as well. I'm going to go back to Sandown for the 225, and Perotto, who I thought ran an absolute blinder at Ascot. He's a horse that feels like he's been around for donkey's years at this stage, and he's had a bit of a truncated year. They don't give him too much racing really, but when he does, he really throws in his all. He was third at Royal Ascot behind Wild Tiger in the Royal Hunt Cup, where they put the hood on him again, and I think that's really helped him. He had last been seen at August the year before, so he's a horse that, as I said, he doesn't appear too much. He's probably on quite a high rating now of 102, but he's got winning form here at Sandown and knows how to do it. I think it's a good race, but I like the booking of Ryan Moore. So Perotto for me is my nap. And then my next best is in the 240 at Haydock. So go back over there for the Lancashire Oaks. This is where Oisin Murphy is for Queen of the Pride. It's a good-looking field. We've got the likes of Tiffany, who Sir Mark Prescott has been on a real roll. They've been over to Germany with her to get some black type, and she proved she could do it on these shores as well at Newcastle too. So she looks like an interesting one. But to TC's point that he made before the Derby, you can always forgive a horse for one bad run. And that's what I'm thinking when it comes to my selection, Forest Fairy, because prior to the Derby, we all thought that this was an extremely exciting horse. We thought that she was one that she won at Chester with that little bit of in hand. She went into the Oaks at a price of 10-1. She did ultimately disappoint, but I think if you think of it in context, she only began running in February. She's done a huge amount in a small amount of time. I think I can forgive her for that. I think at around 6-1, she's not a bad sort of each way shout when you've got 8 runners, the dead 8 in this race. So I like to hope that Forest Fairy can come forward from that. She's been given a little bit of a break, but it is a decent race at Lancashire Oaks at 240. So that is all of it. We've got plenty for you to muster on this weekend. Obviously, the highlight being City of Troy. So looking forward to seeing that. And hopefully we can dissect and pick apart that race and everything else this time next week with Tom Collins and Ross Miller. So thanks again for both of you for joining me. Don't forget, all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK. We've got lots of other offers and promotions throughout this weekend. That is where you need to be. And I'm sure there'll be lots of offers and promotions for the football as well, because that's going to hot up again on Saturday. As ever, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.